In the far edge of the galaxy, there was a frozen planet called Corel. Nothing lived there now. No animals, no plants, no people. It was once full of life-alien cities, science labs, and skyships that flew in perfect rhythm. Then she came. Called her the Ice Queen. No one knew her real name, only the trail she left behind. Anything she touched turned to solid ice. Machines stopped working. Soldiers froze mid-battle. Even energy shields cracked like glass. Her cold was not natural, it was something powerful, strange, and terrifying. She didn't speak, didn't negotiate. She simply walked, and everything around her died. The Galactic Council warned everyone, do not enter the Corel system. But years later, a signal came from that very planet. Weak, broken, but real. It was a distress call from one of the research bases left behind. The Council debated what to do. Many said it was a trap. Some wanted to send drones. Others didn't care at all. Then the humans spoke up. Earth had joined the Galactic Council recently. They weren't trusted by most of the older species. Too emotional, too brave, too unpredictable. When the signal was played, a human soldier stood up and said, I'll go. His name was Ethan. He wasn't a high-ranking officer or a famous hero, just a regular man trained for survival missions. He had no special powers, no advanced weapons, only grit, knowledge, and a strange calmness in his eyes. The council members laughed. One human, a Tharn diplomat, said, You'll freeze before your ship even lands. Ethan just smiled. I'm not going there to fight her. I'm going to listen. No one could stop him. The humans allowed him to use a scout-class vessel named Dawnrider. It wasn't fast, but it was tough and had thick layers of thermal shielding. They filled it with supplies, heating cores, and sensor drones. He took a basic rifle, a translator device, and one personal automa, small photo of his late sister, who had once told him, sometimes all someone needs is for someone else to stay. The journey took 4 days. Corel looked beautiful from orbit. The white-blue surface shimmered like ice crystals under a distant sun. But as Dawnrider entered the atmosphere, everything changed. The clouds were heavy and slow. The temperature dropped fast. Even the ship's systems groaned under. The cold Ethan wore a heat-insulated suit with triple layers. He had 1 hour before the cold began breaking through. He landed near the research base that had sent the signal. It was silent. Snow covered everything. Buildings were half buried. Metal beams stuck out like broken bones. No footprints, no movement. Only wind. Ethan activated his visor scanner. Life signs? 0. Energy readings? Low. Temperature? minus 134 degrees. He moved slowly, his boots crunching against ice. The door to the main lab was open, bent outward like something had forced it from inside. He stepped in. Inside the lab, it was still. Walls were covered in frost. Wires hung like dead vines. Monitors were cracked. He found frozen body scientists, guards, maybe even workers. Their eyes were wide open, hands frozen mid-reach. None of them had weapons drawn. They hadn't fought back. They had tried to run, then his scanner beeped. One tiny signal, it came from deep underground. He followed the path, moving through dark, narrow corridors. The temperature dropped even more. His breath fogged the inside of his visor. Ice formed. On the edges of his gear, the walls shimmered with layers of frost so thick they looked like mirrors. He reached a chamber sealed by a heavy door. Strange marks covered its symbols of the old Kirillon language. He touched it gently, and it slid open with a hiss. Inside stood a tall figure, her back facing him. She wore no armor, no suit. Her body seemed made of cold light and snow, with long white hair flowing like mist. Her feet didn't touch the ground. The air around her shimmered with ice particles that never fell. The Ice Queen. She turned. Her eyes were pale blue and glowing. Her face calm, almost curious. She looked at Ethan for a long moment, not speaking. Then she raised one hand and stepped forward. Ethan felt the air drop to an unbearable chill. His suit alarms screamed. She touched his shoulder. Nothing happened. His suit didn't freeze. His body didn't turn to ice. Her hands stayed there, cold but not deadly. Her eyes widened. He didn't move, didn't raise his weapon, didn't panic. Simply said, "I got your message." Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something. But no words came. She lowered her hand and stepped back. For the first time in years, someone hadn't died from her touch. Forward and said gently, "My name is Ethan. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to understand." She said nothing, only watched him with a strange, quiet look. For the first time, she didn't feel completely alone. Ethan didn't move too fast. He stood still, letting the Ice Queen look at him as long as she wanted. The room was silent, except for the low hum of his suit. Cold air swirled between them, but he was no longer afraid. She slowly stepped back, into the shadows of the chamber. The icy mist around her thinned, like she was pulling it away from him. For a moment, she seemed unsure, like she was thinking. She had never met anyone who didn't freeze at her touch. Ethan lowered his helmet's visor. He wanted her to see his face. The cold hit him like a sharp slap, but he stood his ground. "I'm not here to fight," he said in a calm voice. "I came because of your signal. You called for help." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but still no words came from her mouth. Instead, she turned and moved toward a console at the far end of the chamber. Her fingers hovered above the frozen control panel. It lit up with faint blue light as she touched. A recording began to play. On the screen, a younger version of her appeared. She wore a white lab coat, standing in front of other scientists. Her voice was soft but clear. "Lara Tyven, we've begun testing the Arctic cell. Cure. It's dangerous, but we have no choice. Our people are dying." The screen flickered and jumped. Another clip. Now she was alone. "I'm the only one left. The cure worked. ... but it's changed me. I can't control the cold inside me, please. If anyone finds this, don't let this power fall into the wrong hands. I just wanted to save my world." The recording ended. Ethan finally understood she wasn't a monster. She was a woman who tried to help and became something else in the process. He looked at her and said quietly, "So your name is Alara." She blinked. Slowly her lips moved. "Alara, yes." Her voice was soft and cold, like the wind outside. It was the first word she had spoken in many years. "You didn't mean to hurt anyone, did you?" Ethan asked. She shook her head. "They came with weapons. They feared me, so I stayed. Alone. Yes, safer this way." Took a slow step forward. "But you called for help." She looked away. Her face showed pain and confusion. "I didn't mean to. The machine was damaged. I touched it. The signal went out." Ethan gave a small smile. Then maybe it was a good mistake. She stared at him again, confused. "You were not afraid?" "No," he said. "I've seen worse, and I know what it's like to lose everything." He sat down on a piece of metal nearby, his breath fogging up. "My sister tried to stop a forest fire once, back on Earth. She saved many lives, but she didn't make it out. I guess I understand people who take risks to save others." Alara stepped closer. The cold followed her, but it didn't hurt him. Not like before. It was like her power was listening to her now, or maybe to him. "You're kind. You're not like the others," she said. "Humans." Ethan chuckled softly. "We're strange. We run into danger, even when it's stupid. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it just makes a mess." Alara tilted her head. "You stayed. You did not run. Because running isn't always the answer." Sat across from him, her hands resting on her lap. Her skin glowed faint blue, but the ice didn't spread. The room felt less deadly. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked. "I want to understand you." "Maybe help you," he replied. "I cannot leave this place," she said. "I destroy everything." "Maybe not everything," Ethan said, smiling again. "You touched me, and I'm still here." Her eyes dropped to her hand. She opened her palm and stared at it like it was a weapon. "Maybe the cold is changing." "Or maybe," he said, "you're the one changing." A long pause passed between them. Outside, the wind howled through broken walls. Snowflakes floated into the chamber, shining like stars. But inside, the air felt a little warmer. Alara stood up and walked to a side panel. She touched it, and another section of the base opened a tunnel leading to a lower part of the facility. "Come," she said. Ethan followed her without hesitation. They walked down into a lab full of old machines, frozen plants, and strange crystals. She pointed to a console. "This was the cure chamber. Where I changed, the core is still active. It holds the same energy. Maybe it can be studied." Ethan looked at the glowing chamber. It pulsed like a frozen heart. "This could help others?" She nodded. "But it's dangerous, and we'll be careful." He opened a small case from his backpack and set up a drone to scan the room. The data began uploading to his ship. Laura watched him work, silent for a while. Then she asked, "Do you believe I can be ... more than this?" Ethan didn't look up. "I believe anyone can change, Alara. Even someone called an Ice Queen." For the first time she smiled. It was small and brief, but it was real. Alara stood beside Ethan as the drone scanned the old lab. The soft hum of its engine was the only sound in the room, aside from the faint crackle of frozen wires and the low pulsing glow from the cure chamber. Ethan checked the readings on his tablet. Everything seemed stable, but he could tell the energy inside that core was powerful. Too powerful to be left unguarded. "You stayed here all these years?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. Alara nodded. "I didn't want to, but I had. Too, my presence. It hurts others. Even this base could not survive me for long." The walls cracked, machines failed. It is only silence now. Ethan looked around at the broken lab, once full of life, now a tomb of glass and snow. He couldn't imagine the loneliness she had felt. "But you survived, and that matters." She tilted her head slightly. "Do you always find meaning in pain?" "No," he said, half smiling. "But sometimes pain means something was worth caring for." They walked deeper into the chamber. Lara led the way, her steps light, almost floating. Presence was still cold, but it didn't feel cruel. "Any more?" Ethan's suit kept him warm. But even when she stood close, he didn't feel the bite of death like others had. "Your touch," Ethan said. "Why doesn't it affect me?" Alara paused near a large, round console, her eyes focused. "I don't know, maybe your body is different. Or maybe I'm learning to hold it back." Ethan raised a brow. "You couldn't do that before?" "No," she whispered. "The cold moved through me like breath. It touched whatever I touched. But now, with you, it listens." They stared at each other for a moment. No words passed. There was something quiet but strong between them and understanding. Born not from words, but from shared silence. Then suddenly an alert blared from Ethan's wrist device. He checked it quickly. "A ship just entered orbit," he said. "No ID tag. Not Council. Not human." Lara's expression darkened. "They have returned." "Who?" "Those who wanted to take me?" "Many years ago, before I hid deeper in the ice, a group of mercenaries came. They saw me as a weapon, tried to trap me. I froze them all, but some escaped." Ethan's grip tightened on his gear. "If they're here again, they'll try harder, and they won't care who gets hurt." He tapped his comm device. "Dawn Rider, scan incoming ship. Record all signals. Prepare for immediate recall." No reply. He tried. Again, still nothing. "They're jamming the signal," Ethan said. "We're on our own." Alara walked to the main platform. Frost formed beneath her feet, but the ice stopped before reaching Ethan. "I will face them," she said. "Not alone," Ethan replied. "We'll figure something out." She gave him a strange look. "Why?" "Because you're not a monster, Alara. You're someone who wanted to help. And people like that deserve a second chance." She didn't speak again, but a soft light flickered in her eyes. Not cold this time, something warmer. The lab lights dimmed. A rumble echoed through the halls. They were no longer alone. Ethan grabbed his rifle and took position near the entrance. Alara stood tall beside him, her hands glowing faint blue. She didn't need weapons, she was one. Heavy boots echoed outside. 5 shadows appeared in the icy corridor. Armored suits, heat shields, plasma cannons, mercenaries. One of them stepped forward and called out, "Ice Queen, surrender, we won't." "Ask twice." Alara didn't move. Ethan stepped forward. She's not going anywhere with you. They laughed. Look at this, just a human with a toy gun. Move aside or freeze. Try me, Ethan said calmly. The lead mercenary gave the signal. Weapons charged. La raised her hand. A wave of freezing mist blasted forward, but stopped just before hitting Ethan. The mercenaries screamed as their armor cracked and their weapons iced over. One tried to fire, but the trigger snapped off. In his frozen glove, Ethan moved quickly, using the distraction to disarm one of them. He knocked another to the floor with the back of his rifle. He didn't kill. He didn't have to. Alara had already taken away their strength. Within seconds, they were on the ground, shivering, unable to fight. Alara looked at them, her expression unreadable. They're not worth your pain, Ethan said. She nodded once, and the cold around her faded slightly. The mercenaries lay there, eyes wide, realizing the truth. She could have killed them, but didn't. What now? She asked. Now we take their ship, Ethan said. We send a real message to the council. Not just data, but proof. Alara hesitated. Leave this place. With me, he said. You don't have to be alone anymore. Her eyes met his. For a moment, the Ice Queen looked like the scientist she once was, someone who believed in saving lives, not ending. Then, let's go, she said, together. They stepped out of the frozen chamber, heading into a future neither of them could predict, but no longer feared. Ethan moved quickly through the cold halls of the base, checking his rifle and scanning the walls. The mercenaries were still alive but unconscious, covered in frost and fear. Alara walked beside him, quiet and calm. Her presence no longer felt like a storm. Now it was more like a winter breeze, still cold, but no longer deadly. We need to reach their ship before they recover, Ethan said. Alara nodded. It's not far. They must have landed just beyond the northern ridge. Can you slow down the storm outside? Ethan asked. I can try, she answered softly, as they stepped out of the base. The wind howled and snow blew across the icy ground. But as Alara raised her hand, the storm shifted. The winds pulled back, the snow thinned, and a path opened toward the ridge. Ethan stared in quiet awe. You're getting better at this, he said. Maybe it's you, she replied. They moved. Fast, following the narrow path between sharp ice cliffs and frozen rocks. Ethan kept his rifle ready, scanning for any signs of hidden mercenaries. Alara, though unarmed, kept her hands glowing faintly, just in case. They reached the top of the ridge and saw the enemy ship. It was small, dark gray, and marked with warning symbols. Its engines were still warm, humming low. The ramp was open, no guards, Ethan whispered. They weren't expecting to lose. They stepped inside. The lights flickered as Alara passed, but the systems didn't shut down completely. She focused hard, trying to control the cold within her. Ethan moved to the control panel and began typing fast. I'm locking down the engines, he said, and sending a message to the council. They'll know exactly who tried to take you. Alara looked around the ship's interior. It was made for watertight walls, weapon racks, and chains meant to hold something powerful. Maybe her. She reached out and touched one of the chains. It snapped from her frost, but not violently. Her cold was more focused now, more precise. Used to think I was a danger, she said. Now I see. They made me into one. Ethan looked up. You're not the one who wanted this. They did. He finished the transmission. Done. The message is sent. Now we just wait for the council to respond. Alarms suddenly beeped. Ethan's screen showed movement back at the base. Some of them woke up, he said. They're trying to escape. Lara closed her eyes. Let them. They will find no shelter on this planet. Ethan agreed. We've taken their ship, and we have the cure chamber data. The council can't ignore this now. They sat in silence for a few minutes. The ship was warm inside, but Alara didn't. Need the heat? Still, she stayed close to Ethan, sitting beside him without a word. Does it hurt? He asked suddenly. What, holding the cold back like that? She thought for a moment. It's like holding my breath. I can do it for a while, but not forever. Ethan looked at her hands. You've done it since we met. Because you're different, she said. You listen. You don't fear. Me. I figured if you wanted to kill me, I'd be ice by now, he said with a small smile. She didn't laugh, but the corners of her lips lifted slightly. You trust to Isili, maybe, he said, but you earned it. They heard a soft tone from the console. The council was responding. Ethan opened the message. The voice of a council elder came through, slow and serious. Your message has been received. We are sending a science vessel and peace team to retrieve the data and speak with the entity known as Alara. Do not leave orbit. Alara looked at Ethan. Peace team. It means they're not here to fight, he said. They want to talk. She looked unsure. What if they lie? Then I'll stand between you and them, Ethan said. You're not alone anymore, she nodded once. Then I will face them. With you. A few hours later, the science ship arrived. It was large, round, and bright, nothing like the mercenaries' vessel. It floated gently down beside them on the ice, and a group of council envoys stepped. Out, they wore no weapons. Instead, they carried scanners and tablets. They paused when they saw Alara. Some looked afraid. Others just stared. Ethan stood tall. This is Dr. Alara Tyven. She tried to save her people. You turned her into a story. To scare others. But she deserves more than fear. She deserves truth. The council envoys said nothing for a long time. Then the lead envoy, a tall creature with soft blue skin, stepped forward. We wish to hear her story, and we wish to help. Lara didn't answer. She simply nodded. That was enough. As the scientists entered the ship to copy the data and study the cure chamber, Alara stayed with Ethan outside. Watching the frozen land that had been her prison for so long, do you think they'll keep their word? She asked. I don't know, Ethan replied, but I'll be here, as long as you need. She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly reached out and touched his hand. The cold was there, but it didn't bite. It felt like snow on a winter morning, and for the first time she didn't feel like a queen of ice. She felt human. The science vessel stayed for 3 days. The council team worked carefully, setting up equipment to study the cure chamber. They asked Alara many questions, but always through Ethan. She trusted him more than anyone else. Ethan didn't leave her side. During the day, he helped the scientists collect samples and copy data from the frozen machines. At night, he and Alara sat by the ridge, looking out over the white plains of Kurel. The stars above looked clearer here, like they were closer. Your people, Alara said one night, do they fear what's different? Ethan looked up at the sky. Some do. Some fear what they don't understand. But some try to understand anyway. And you? She asked. I used to be afraid of a lot of things, he said quietly, but not anymore. She looked at him, eyes soft and glowing faintly in the dark. Because of me? Yeah, he said. Because you showed me that strength isn't always about power. It's about staying when everyone else runs. The next morning, the council team held a meeting inside the enemy ship. Ethan and Alara were invited. They stood before a round table of scientists, envoys, and officers. Screens behind them showed data, energy readings, and records from the old lab. The lead envoy spoke first. The cure chamber holds knowledge. That could help many species. Dr. Alara, your sacrifice may save millions. Alara didn't react. The envoy continued. We ask that you allow us to bring you to the Galactic Research Center. There, we can study your condition and begin treatment. And what if she says no? Ethan asked. The envoy paused. Then we will respect her choice. Alara looked at Ethan, then at the council. I will go, she said. But only if Ethan goes with me. One of the council guards raised a brow. He is not a scientist. He is the reason I am still alive, Alara said. He understands what no scanner can see. Ethan smiled. Guess I'm going with you. Soon after, they boarded the science vessel and left Kurel. As the ship lifted off, Alara stood by the window. The frozen planet grew smaller below them, a ball of white and blue. Will you miss it? Ethan asked. No, she said. But I won't forget it. On board, the scientists kept their distance at first. They were careful not to get too close to Alara, but she showed control. No ice, no accidents. With Ethan nearby, her power stayed quiet. One day, a young researcher dropped a data tablet. Alara reached down and picked it up. The girl flinched, but nothing happened. The tablet was fine. Her hand was warm. The room fell silent. Alara handed it back and gave a small nod. The girl whispered, "Thank you." From that moment, things changed. The crew began to greet Alara with respect. She no longer had to hide her hands. She began to ask questions, two about human culture, alien foods, and stars she had never seen. Ethan laughed once when she tried coffee and made a face. "Too bitter," she said. "You'll learn to love it," he said. When they arrived at the research center, a large crowd waited. Some came to witness history. Others came out of fear. The Ice Queen, now known as Dr. Alaro, was something. More than legend now, she was real. The council made a public announcement. "This is not a tale of fear. This is a story of redemption," they said. Dr. Alaro once risked everything for her people. Now, with the help of a human soldier, she brings that hope to all of us. For the first time in years, Alara stood in a room full of people without freezing anything. Her powers didn't flare. Her hands didn't shake. She stood with Ethan at her side and spoke slowly. "I do not wish to be feared anymore. I wish to help. I am not alone." After the speech, scientists began working on a way to carefully separate her body from the unstable energy caused by the cure. It would take time, months, maybe years, but they were hopeful. And Alara was ready. She began teaching again, helping. Young minds understand her research. Ethan helped where he could, often acting as her voice when people hesitated to approach. He stayed in her guest quarters, watched over her during tests, and made sure she was never alone. They became known across the stars. Stories spread of the Ice Queen and the soldier, how she once destroyed, but now healed. One evening, as the stars shined through the station's windows, Alara sat with Ethan on a bench overlooking space. "Do you still believe in me?" she asked. "Every day," he replied. "Even if I never lose this power completely." "Even then," he said. She looked at him, then slowly reached out again. This time her fingers touched his bare hand. No cold, just warmth. She smiled. Just with her lips, but with her whole face. "Then maybe," she said, "I'm not the Ice Queen anymore." Months passed at the research center. The once feared Ice Queen had become something else someone knew. Alara walked the bright halls without freezing the walls, without leaving frost on the floor. People no longer avoided her. They greeted her with quiet smiles and cautious respect. And some, like the young scientists she taught, even looked up to her. But none stayed closer than Ethan. He followed no orders, wore no uniform anymore. He was not her bodyguard, not her protector. Was her companion, her friend. Her anchor. Together, they watched the slow progress of her healing. The cure was not simple. The energy inside her, once wild and deadly, now pulsed gently like a sleeping star. The doctors said it would take time, and maybe it would never fully go away. But something had changed already. She had learned to live with it. One morning, Alara stood in front of a group of students explaining how her planet had used cold-based cells to slow down viral growth. She spoke with calm confidence. No ice crept onto the screen. Her voice no longer echoed with sadness. After class, she joined Ethan in the garden dome, where artificial trees and soft grass filled the air with warmth. Quiet escape from the cold past. "I spoke for 2 hours today," she said, sitting beside him on the bench, and not a single snowflake appeared. Ethan smiled. She looked at her hand. It glowed faintly, but didn't frost over. "They asked about Corel, about my people. I didn't freeze. I didn't shake." "You're stronger than you think," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. "I wasn't. Not before you." "We're always strong," Ethan said. "You just needed someone to remind you." She leaned back against the bench. The sunlight above made her silver hair shine. "What will happen when the council decides my power is no longer a danger?" What then? Whatever you want, Ethan said. You're free. Free, she repeated, as if testing the word. On her tongue, the peace didn't last long. 3 days later, a new threat appeared. It's not a warship or a weapon, but a message. A pirate faction, known for stealing technology and capturing rare species, had learned about Alara's cure. They sent a warning: hand over the research, or they would take it by force. The council panicked. Alarms echoed through the station. Defense systems were activated. All access to the cure lab was locked down. Guards took position outside Alara's quarters. They want the cure, one council officer said. They'll come for it. And for me, Alara added, voice steady. You're not going anywhere, Ethan said firmly. We'll protect you. The station prepared for attack. Fighters patrolled the space around them. The cure chamber was moved to a deep vault. All records were backed up on hidden servers. That night, Alara sat by the window, watching distant stars flicker like tiny candles. Ethan joined her, she said. If they come, I could stop them. I still have my power. You've worked so hard to control it, Ethan said. You don't have to become that again. But what if it's the only way? He reached for her hand. Then I'll stand beside you, not because of what you can do, but because of who you are. The pirates arrived 2 days later. Their ship was large and ugly, covered in stolen metal, fired warning shots but didn't land. Instead, it sent a signal: surrender the cure or face destruction. The council hesitated. ALA or DNI did. She walked into the control room, her coat flowing like snow behind her. The guards moved aside. She looked at the screen, saw the enemy ship, and spoke clearly. This cure was never meant to be a weapon, but I will not let you use it to harm others. The pirates responded with laughter. Then prepare to be taken, Ice Queen. Alara stepped outside onto the station platform, her body glowing. Ethan followed, standing beside her, rifle ready, but not raised. As the pirate ship drew closer, Lara lifted her hand. A wave of frost shot through space. Not wild, but sharp and clear. It wrapped around the pirate ship, freezing its engines. The weapons shut down, alarms on there. End screamed. They tried to fire, but their controls turned to ice, and then silence. The ship drifted. Helpless, the council cheered. Alarms turned off. Alara stood tall, her power slowly fading from her fingertips. Her breath was steady, her control perfect. It's over, Ethan said. For now, she replied. The pirate ship was towed away. The council sent thanks. The galaxy watched in awe. The Ice Queen, once feared for destruction, had saved them all without spilling a drop of blood, and she had done it with control. Days later, Council offered her a place on their science board. She could lead new research, travel between worlds, and help rebuild what had once been lost. But Alara said no. Instead, she chose to stay with Ethan. Not as a weapon, not as a queen, but as herself. They moved to a quiet colony on a green world far from Curel, a place where flowers bloomed instead of snow, and where no one called her a monster sometimes. On cold mornings, her hands still glowed. But she wasn't afraid anymore, because now, when she reached out to touch someone, they didn't freeze. They smiled.